Hello and welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast with Jackson and Kyle. I am Jackson, and I'm joined here, as always, by the man who is very disappointed we will not be talking about Mac Jones this year in this list. Kyle, how are you doing?
Doing good. How do you know I didn't name him as my Jaguar starter? Am I
I
right?
guess so. Yeah, we'll see. To be determined.
To be determined, indeed. Don't think he's going to make the list. But I'm doing good. I am in the woods of New Hampshire, so you see the different backdrop here for me. I drove 26 hours over the weekend, and overall doing pretty good.
Yeah, it's nice for you to join us from what looks to be like a Bond villain mansion over there.
It's definitely not a Bond villain mansion. In fact, it's a camper, but
Okay,
it is a
it
nice
looks like
camper.
it.
So, uh,
well disguised if nothing else. Okay, yeah. What are you doing in New Hampshire?
Just enjoying life, man. No, I'm
Okay,
just up
cool.
here for 5 weeks, so yeah, just enjoying some time up north, and why not?
Okay, sure. Well, yeah. That's fun. Hopefully the internet. You warned me ahead of time, but I'll warn the audience. Hopefully the internet works okay there. But so far it's going well. So, Kyle. I love this show. This is a very hashtag fun show. Sometimes we say some things that end up being proven to be untrue. Not this one. 100% accurate every single year.
Yeah, we are always accurate in this one. This was our first show that I think really got some tension brewing
Hmm.
amongst the chat holders and us. I think the first year because we started this 32 ranking the 32 the first year we did this podcast, and I think like something happened to where we ranked. I think it was Derek Carr was ranked too low, and people just lost their minds. And I mean, admittedly, like we had Josh Allen like 19th or something the first year
Hmm.
we did this. I remember he was low too, and it was like his breakout year, and that was one we got wrong. But now we got it all 100% right.
Yeah, well, the mistakes are over. This is perfect. Yeah. So if you don't know how this works, we've done this for several years now, where we're going to do it draft style. So Kyle picks a player, then I pick a player, and we go back and forth. Picking our list from 1 to 32. It's starting quarterbacks for every team. So this is who we believe is the best quarterback on the roster for each team, and then ranking those. So it won't just be top 32 quarterbacks because in theory, for example, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they have Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, but we're not going to pick both of them, just whichever one we decide is better. And if it's confusing at all, I'm sure you'll get it as we go along. Kyle, how do you want to start? Do you want to start off this list? Number one is obvious, but do you want to be the one who picks number one, or do you want me?
I can pick number one. Why not? Make you have the interesting number two pick. So, yeah, I mean, number one, this is very obvious. He's the best player in football. He's won several Super Bowls now. He's won back-to-back Super Bowls. It's Patrick Mahomes. And I think it's very obviously Patrick Mahomes for several reasons. A, he continues to seemingly get better and better. B, he continues to win at the highest level. And I think that is a huge factor to the quarterback play. And look, I think even Chiefs fans would have to admit last season that you could say for the majority, if not all of the season, the Kansas City Chiefs were not the best team in the NFL last year. The biggest differentiating factor is they had number 15 on their team and every other team did not. I continue to look back at that Buffalo's Bill game in the playoff last season where I thought Josh Allen played 95% a great game. It was a fantastic game, I thought, for him. But Mahomes was just 5% better. And that was a difference in that game. And I continue to say that I think that that was Patrick Mahomes' best game of his career, even though he's had more statistically impressive ones. He was just in total control. And it just seems like no matter what, even if the Chiefs get a little bit worse, he's going to find a way to get better when they need it the most and rise to the occasion. And so that's why Patrick Mahomes is still number one and probably will be for the next 5 or 6 years.
Counterpoint: he sometimes is a little whiny.
Yeah, he is.
Hmm. What's the argument against Mahomes being one? I can't think of one. I legitimately can't. Like, he has checks every box. The box score stats, like the eye test, like advanced stats, like winning. Like there's no argument. He's number one.
I mean, at this point, he's probably the no, he's not the only. He's one of the few consensus best players in the league for their sport, right?
Yeah.
Like I think Jokic is still pretty heavily majority for NBA, but I think there's debate. Um, I guess Otani would be up there. McDavid's probably up there. I don't know enough about tennis, but Novak Djokovic. Um, so like those are like the few candidates, but like I think he's above and beyond. Like he's probably going to have the highest majority of number one picks for best player in the league.
Yeah, 'cause when does that happen in football? I feel like it's always like it's Brady, but then it's Brady versus Peyton Manning, or even Brady versus Aaron Rodgers. Like it was Montana versus Marino, right? I feel like there's always a debate. Not now.
At this point, no. Can's the tough thing is that he's beaten his opponents.
Right.
Obviously, like you could, there was the Brady versus Mahomes even debate towards the end of it because Brady
Hmm.
did manage to beat him, but like I feel like the guys we're gonna rattle off here, like one of them did beat Mahomes, obviously, but until one of these guys below him beat him, like it's hard to take anybody else seriously in the conversation, right?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the people in the conversation because this list starts at number two. To me, there are three players you could put at number two. I think they're all great. Those, which we'll talk about them, but I'm going with the guy who has beaten Mahomes. I'm going Joe Burrow here at number two. I know
All
a lot of
right.
people will still have Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. I feel like, I don't know. So here's my thought. I went back and forth with these top the next three. Um my thought was I still feel like Joe Burrow's 2021 season is the best season that any of these guys has put together. I think that season was that was the year they went to the Super Bowl. But even forgetting about going to the Super Bowl part, just I thought his efficiency was so good in that season. I think he's pretty much done that consistently. To me, he's been consistently the better player. Josh Allen, I thought should have won MVP last year, but I also thought it was kind of a weak MVP field last year. Lamar Jackson did win MVP last year, but he's had his down years. Allen's had his down years. I think if you look at just consistency, I'm going to still go with Burrow at two.
I agree with a lot of what you said. I did have him third,
Hmm.
just because I do think it was a little bit of a down year. I think people are overreacting to him playing injured though and saying he's poor. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think as far as like if you're gonna say one person has shown the poise to go toe to toe with Mahomes, it's probably him. The guy who could challenge him the best. I still think that's true. Though I guess the one criticism you have with Joe Burrow is, you know, we have to also like, yes, you want to be better in January than you are in September, but you can't put yourself, 3 weeks behind in September next season. Like,
Hmm.
can we see this team kick ass from the start of the year to the end of the year? That's kind of the one thing I want to see. But overall, like, I still think. I still think if you have a January game with Joe Burrow, I still feel pretty good about your chances against anyone but Kansas City.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that Joe Flacco already has January Joe, right? Like, because it feels
Yeah.
like Burrow would it fit a lot better with Burrow, but unfortunately Flacco snuck in and took that one. Yeah, I mean the other critiques doesn't play the Steelers well. Joe Burrow struggles against the Steelers, and then
Hmm.
the injuries. I think the injury. I think that's a fair reason to dock him. He is. I made a. I compiled a bunch of top 32 rankings from other like websites and stuff, and compiled them together. Joe Burrow, on average, finished fourth in those. So I think it's the injury last year and stuff like that. But I feel people have forgotten about him. He's really good.
Yeah, he is really good, and I expect him to have a bounce back season. I think he'll compete for an MVP award, and the Bengals should compete for a Super Bowl as well. So I'm not too worried about Joe Burrow. I did have him third on my list, and I guess the one thing you can critique him, especially compared to the guys we're going to list here for probably 3, 4, and 5, is he's not as physically like dominant as those guys, and I think that
Hmm.
matters to some people, especially when you're watching him on TV.
Yeah, definitely. The highlights might not quite be as impressive, but he's still a really good athlete too. I feel like people
Yeah.
kind of forget about that because you compare him to Lamar Jackson. Okay, Kyle. Someone in the chat says Goff number three. Are you going with? Will the Jared Goff slide finally end here at number three?
Jared Goff is not being selected here. Um, as this show was the captain of the Josh Allen is MVP uh, campaign last season, I think it's time we put Josh Allen here at number 3. I had him number 2 on my list. I think he's fantastic. I mean, if you're going to compare him to Joe Burrow, I think the two things that stand out to him is A, the physical impressiveness that, that January Buffalo game, even though they lost that game, he put his team in a position to kick a field goal to tie the game and was physically pretty awesome. He had 2 or 3 throws there that maybe one other person in the world can bank. So I think that those are things that go in Josh Allen's favor. And B, I think the consistency and the ability to stay healthy is a huge factor in Josh Allen's wheelhouse. This Buffalo team, this Buffalo franchise had its championship window seemingly. We all kind of viewed it the last couple of years as, is this window closing, because they continue year after year to lose a guy or two, lose a guy or two, lose a guy or two. And they've continued to do that over the years. But it just seems like Josh Allen wakes up and wins 11 games with this team. I mean, that's just kind of what he does these last few seasons. He's been a model of consistency. He's been able to stay on the field, stay healthy, even though he takes some honestly just ridiculous hits and reckless hits. He's been able to do it. But until I see, we're going to do our divisional previews later in the season. But until I see these AFC East teams show that they can knock Josh Allen off the pedestal and Buffalo can't win 11 games, I might still just believe that Josh Allen's going to be able to win 11 games just because of who he is and the talent he is. I think he's fantastic, and he should be number 2.
Yeah, I get it. I had him at 3. Again, you're splitting hairs, I think, with 2, 3, and 4.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think so. I talked a lot last offseason about how I thought in many ways the turnovers Josh Allen thing was an overblown narrative, and it was an overblown narrative. But it still is to some degree true. Like he still will have those games that like that Jets game where he will have his moments. So when we're splitting hairs, that was kind of the differentiator to drop him to 3 for me.
Yeah, I can get it. And, Joe Burrow is much more careful with the football against any team not named Pittsburgh. That's for certain. But I just think the outrageous highs that Josh Allen still shows he can have are substantial. And I think those are things like he's still, to me, the closest we can get to Mahomes as a player because he has those highs and he has those moments.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Number 4. So my list has been perfectly in line so far. I have Lamar at 4. I think that the guy's won 2 MVPs and been in the league for 5 years. Has to be pretty high up on the list. And like so I said I thought Allen deserved MVP last year. I thought Lamar was really close to Allen. I thought Lamar definitely was worthy of an MVP award last season. I think the reason why I put him kind of in the lowest out of these top 4 was just last year was amazing, but we haven't seen that from him every year. We have seen him have top 10 seasons instead of top 5 seasons. So because of that hurt his stock a little bit. But yeah, I mean, Lamar is incredible as well.
Yeah, he's still in that conversation for me. He's also 4th on my list, so we're kind of in lockstep here, except for we switched 2 and 3. I agree with everything you said. He's physically impressive. He has multiple MVP awards, which are deserved. So I don't critique it too much, even though, I think it could have been debated last season. But yeah, I mean, he's just fantastic. He's a fantastic quarterback, but I still think it comes down to he's going to have to prove that we said January Joe. What can Lamar win in January is still going to be a conversation. I know they won a playoff game last year. I know they made the conference championship game, but I still think it's fair to say that it was a less than spectacular. Oh my gosh, less than spectacular performance from him in those 2 games, and especially towards the end of that Chiefs game where there were some mistakes. Not all on him, Zay Flowers diving into the end zone and fumbling didn't help. And also committing a penalty in that possession. But there are still mistakes that he made in those games that I think have to be made, be accounted for. And those are things he's just going to have to prove, and it's going to be a narrative until it's not.
Yeah, exactly. And again, when we're talking about you as the 4th best player, there's going to be nitpicks. That's just what we have to do to differentiate these guys. But I agree. He did throw in a triple coverage like that. That we can't pretend that didn't happen. Let's move on. Number 5. Where are you going?
All right, I'm going to put my head in the sand here. People aren't going to like this. I think he's probably the most debated quarterback in the NFL, and I don't see it ending this season either because this team's going to stink. Justin Herbert. I'm not swaying off the Justin Herbert bandwagon. That team was a laughing stock as soon as he got injured. That being said, I don't want to advocate to say that he was awesome last season either. I do think he has to prove himself a little bit this year. I do think he has some chip on his shoulder before I start docking him a little bit more. Granted, I don't think this team's going to be good, but I want him to play a little bit better than he's shown some of the and especially towards the end before they shut him down with the injury. He can't have a 7-0 New England game like he did last year and stuff like that. I want to see him go out there and yes, it's not a perfect situation. Yes, it's not an ideal roster, but great quarterbacks, the top 4 guys in front of him, and as we just said with Josh Allen wins 11 games every year. Granted, he plays in Mahomes' division, it's not easy, but I wanna see Herbert go out there and win some ball games because he's Justin Herbert, and let's see it happen.
Well, you're a big quarterback wins guy. I mean, you've always said about Herbert, like, I don't care about how good he looks. It doesn't win, so what does it matter?
Yeah, exactly. Huge
Hmm.
QB wins.
Yeah,
But,
no,
you know,
that's yeah. Go ahead.
I just think, the rising tide does lift all boats, and, a great quarterback should be the rising tide. And yes, it's not always going to translate into wins, but even if this team wins 5 games next season, I want to see Herbert great in those 5 wins, and I want to see him great in the losses too. And I think he had a little bit of inconsistent moments last year that made a lot of the naysayers, which honestly are just way too loud at this point. It gave them some validity and gave them some it gave him a reason to be loud is the problem. And let's see him back it up.
I don't think this is that hot of a take. I actually think most people have Herbert as kind of not in the top elite guys of the top 4, but I had about 5 on my list as well. So I'm with you. My only critique is I think I would like to see him be a bit more aggressive on some of these throws sometimes. But other than that,
Mhm.
I don't really have many critiques. I think he's a really good player.
Yeah. I would say his one critique for me, like you said, he doesn't force some throws sometimes, but I just think the 4 guys in front of him, like those guys just have an innate ability to create something out of nothing.
Hmm.
And he doesn't seem to want to. Not I don't I think he has it in his toolbox. He just doesn't seem to want to sometimes. And maybe that's not always a bad thing cuz I do think especially from like the Josh Allen and Lamar perspective, they end up with some really stupid plays because of it. But sometimes you need it. Sometimes you need it as a great quarterback.
Yeah, I am interested in what they can do if they can get a better situation for Herbert. But let's move on to number 6. This could be a contested one because this is the player who I struggled at where to put this player. Uh, I'm still going Aaron Rodgers here at number 6. I have
Yeah.
Rodgers. He's someone who I get it. Guy's older. 2 years ago, he wasn't great. Last year, he got his Achilles injury, missed the entire season. The upside is still so high with Aaron Rodgers that if he could win an MVP next year, and I
Yeah.
think that you could say that about some other guys as well. But I thought he was still pretty good 2 years ago. It was just not a great situation. The Achilles injury is scary, especially how he kind of rushed back from it. All that's scary, but I'm still going to put him at 6.
Yeah, I don't hate the pick. Like I think the best version of Aaron Rodgers could be higher, but I think the like just a good version of Aaron Rodgers is probably sixth. I do
Hmm.
agree with that. I did have him at ninth just because I'm just not 100% sure he's going to be that guy, but I do think he can be that guy. So
Yeah.
I did donk him a little bit just because I want to see it first. So I did have him at ninth, and I did have a few guys ahead of him, but I could definitely see him end up in this situation. And I mean, they've given him all the tools he would need this season. They've fixed the offensive line situation a lot. I don't know if it's perfect, but it's significantly better than it was last season. So there's expectations high for the Jets and Aaron Rodgers, and you know 90% of what Aaron Rodgers was pre Achilles injury, or even 85% of Aaron Rodgers pre Achilles injury, this Jets team's going to win a lot of football games.
Yeah, and I get it. Any critique you have is totally valid and totally fair. It's just for me, I kind of v- just feel like I don't know. The past 4 years, this guy's won 2 of the MVPs, right? Like I know past 2 years haven't been great. I think I'm still going to. Me, I'll be the last. Usually for me, I'm the last one off the train when a old player isn't good anymore. Maybe that's the case here, but I'm still holding on to him being good.
Did Aaron Rodgers telling Tucker Carlson he doesn't watch porn change your rankings at all?
Did that's a story that happened?
Yeah, apparently I just saw the clip today. I was laughing. Um, Listen, I don't want my quarterbacks pent up and stressed out. I need them relaxed back there in the pocket. If I have a stressed out quarterback, it's not going to go well. Maybe that's
May
why I docked him.
Yeah, maybe that's why he I don't know struggles in the postseason. Maybe there's some correlation there. There's too much stress.
Yeah, that's probably what it is. Maybe porn's the answer, Aaron Rodgers. Think about that.
maybe,
Don't worry
maybe.
about
We'll
getting canceled too much.
we'll see. We'll see if he could. That's our free advice. Aaron Rodgers, number 7. Kyle, where are you going?
Uh, this might be controversial. I could see it being controversial. I just unabashedly love this player, and he was On my fake MVP ballot last season, he was fourth. I thought he was fantastic. I thought it was a real nice bounce back season after coming off an injury. Matthew Stafford. I think this
Okay.
Rams offense is going to be awesome. I think he's a fantastic thrower of the football, and I think he does everything right. And really lifted a not awesome Rams team. I think last season, if they get a healthy Cooper Cup with Puka Nakua, I think this Rams offense can be awesome this next season, and I think Stafford's a big part of it. So I had him sixth on my rankings, and he's going seven here.
It's a bit high. It's a bit high for me. He was 10th on the consensus big board, I guess I could call it. 10th on my rankings as well. So, not a massive reach or anything like that. I get why you have him this. I mean, he was really good last year. And I think
Yeah.
kind of underrated. He's been a better player since going over to the Rams. He had that 1 year where he got injured, but I do feel like he's actually been a little better in that Sean McVay scheme and all that. Obviously, he was amazing in that postseason run. There's a lot to really like about Stafford. I think the only thing you'd have to mention is again someone you have to live with some lows with Stafford.
Yeah, he can definitely get dumb with the football sometimes. There
Hmm.
is that risk, but I think there's enough highs there that I can really just accept some of that, and I think that he's with that young receiving core that they had and Cooper Cup. I thought he really lifted them last season and put them at a level that I just wasn't expecting, honestly. So I give him a ton of credit for that, and I thought it was a fantastic season for him, and I'm expecting more this year.
Yeah, and a lot of guys that people are going to say should be ahead of him. Those guys don't have Super Bowls, and Stafford does. So you got to give him at least a little, maybe a little bit of an extra bump for that.
Yeah. Sure, why not?
Yeah, at least he can perform in the big moments. Let's go to number 8. I have CJ Stroud, who is number
Mhm.
7 on my board. Again, another tough guy to pick because like there is a bit of projection. Listen, Stroud got MVP votes last year. I'm not saying he did. I don't think I would have put him on my ballot, but he was really good. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And guys who do what he did as a rookie usually end up, it reminded me a lot of Joe Burrow's rookie year, right? Where it's just like he comes in, it's not like perfect right away, but it's really good. And you could argue who's better than Joe Burrow was as a rookie. I mean, some of the stuff he can do, there's no reason to believe he can't fix some of the small rookie mistakes that he didn't make last year. They happened, and propel himself to a I don't know. He could be a top 5 quarterback next year. That's totally his ceiling.
Yeah, uh, I don't think it was crazy to say he was an outsider to the candidate list, but he was an MVP candidate at one point last season as a rookie.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
if you're going to do that year one, obviously you're going to jump way up the list. And yeah, we're really excited about CJ Stroud across the league. I think obviously, and I had him seventh as well. So I had you had Stafford a little bit lower. I had Rodgers a little bit lower coming off the injury. But yeah, we both had him here at 7, and I think that the Texans, like I said, I mean, it's incredible what happened here with this Texans team that he changed this franchise overnight. This was a team that was viewed as a laughing stock, and now they're trying to build a Super Bowl team this year. And it's not ironic to say that. And that's how much he's changed his franchise in just one season. And I'm expecting him to continue to get even better, like you said.
Yeah. So, exciting to see where he goes. Number 9, where are you going?
I have this guy 8. Um, he, he's really good. He's played in the Super Bowl. He's continued to put up really good numbers on a really good team. I have Jalen Hurts. I don't hate it. I think he's a fantastic, I think outside of Lamar, he's probably the best runner for a quarterback without a doubt. And I think he's very accurate with the football. Um, I just don't know if he has the ceiling as some of the guys above him, and I think that's okay to say. I think my if I were to critique him compared to the guys ahead of him, you know, the as good as he is, and as much as I think he matters as a locker room person because it's clear that he just kind of has that leadership thing that people rally behind. That he has the kind of the moxie to play the position and the poise to play the position. I think physically, I don't think he has the arm talent of some of the guys above him or all of the guys above him, really. And that's probably the one thing that holds him back as far as ranking him as a top 5 guy. But that being said, he's still really good. He runs that system excellently, and he's a top 10 quarterback.
Yeah, sorry, I was a little distracted. I spilled some Diet Coke, so I was cleaning that up as I was listening. But
Oh boy.
yes, well, for a second when you started phrasing that, I'm like puts up good numbers, has been to a Super Bowl. I'm like, is Kyle going Jared Goff already? No, the Jared Goff slide continues. Yeah, I'm with you. Actually, I had we're in bit in lockstep. Kyle, we started to think together. This is not great podcasting because we always just agree with each other now. But I had him next to my list as well, which was eighth because I had Stafford at 10. But um, but yeah, I'm with you. I think it's fair to I was at that playoff game against Tampa Bay. Like, I don't know what more he could have done in that situation. Guys were
Hmm.
just not getting open. There was pressure pretty consistently. That just wasn't there wasn't a lot he could do. I know people kind of discredited his season 2 years ago a little bit for saying like, well, good situation. I don't know. I think he's a really good player, but I agree. There is it doesn't have the a cannon for an arm, but is really accurate and knows how to put the ball in the right spot. And is a mobile enough guy as well that yeah, 8, 9 around here. This feels fair.
Yeah, I think it's the right spot for him. Like, I think the one thing you could critique is that he can't make the same tight windows that I think a lot of the top quarterbacks can,
Mhm.
and I think that's the criticism. But I think the thing is that his legs are so good and he's so smart about running the football that he doesn't have to make tight window throws all the time because he can just tuck it and run. And I think that's just a huge advantage that he has. Not to mention that I do think he is accurate with the football. So I think he's got a really good two-way combination with that running and throwing. But yeah, I just think, physically it's a little bit different. And they have to alter their offense a little bit so that they can run they can run the throws that he can make.
Skip Bayless in the chat with a bunch of clown emojis. Oh, I had no idea Skip Bayless was such a fan of the show. Although I guess not a
Oh
fan of the
yeah.
show. It's the clown emojis.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he's calling Jalen Hurts a clown. You never know.
Oh, that's probably it. Yeah, I think that it's just Skip Bayless, big fan of us, but the Jalen Hurts just couldn't help himself. Had to type a clown emoji a bunch of times.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Mhm.
yeah, glad to have you here, Skip. Can't say I'm a huge fan.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks for joining, Skip. Number 10. Let's go to uh Jordan Love. Jordan Love makes my
Yeah.
list at the top 10. Who again, weird guy. How do you what do you do with his first year? At times, towards the end of the year, he was great and like better than top 10. I think you could argue that
Hmm.
he even really showed flashes towards the middle part of the year as well. I guess my question is like, what do I do with those bad games that he had, like kind of scattered throughout the first 2/3 of the season? Because he did have those. We can't pretend those didn't happen. And my question is, I ended up putting him above Stafford on my list. I had him at 9 and Stafford at 10 because I think that he had kind of a Matt Stafford esque season. But I think the hope, if you're a Packers fan, is well, what he did the last 5, 6 weeks of the year. That's who he really is. Whereas the concern, and maybe the hope, if you're a Bears fan, is that well, he still had those bad games. Maybe he's just inconsistent and happened to string together some good games towards the end of the year. So tough guy to evaluate after 1 year, which is part of what makes this a fun exercise. But I had him at number 9 on my list. He goes here at number 10. Something love over Goff? Question mark, frowny face. Yes, love over Goff.
Love over Goff indeed because I have Jordan Love 10 too. So we have the same top 10, just different order. Um,
Uh huh.
um,
And not that different of order too. Only a couple
Yeah,
spots
I
different.
mean, yeah, there's only a few differences between our lists. Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said. I do want to see the consistency improve, but that could also be a new starting quarterback thing, more so than how inconsistent he's going to be for his entire career. I agree with that. I think the weird thing about it is like the reason the reason why to be so optimistic about it is it's not like the inconsistent performances were scattered throughout the season. It was really bad and then okay, and then really good.
Yeah. Hmm.
Like he got really good by the end of the season. And I mean, by the I guess because a couple we're gonna debate the guys below him here in a second, and you know the way he was playing the second half of the season. Does San Francisco win a Super Bowl with Jordan Love as their quarterback at the way he was playing at the end of the year?
Right. I think so. I would say yes. Yeah,
Mhm.
I think that's a good way to look at it. Of which Jordan Love. A lot of these quarterbacks I think below we're going to kind of get a run of like the quote unquote game managers, right? Which always seem to go like 11 through 15. I think that what Jordan Love can bring to the table is he can give you more. He can on the when play breaks down, he can give you something extra. So that's why I have him at higher than those guys.
I completely agree with it. So yeah, I'm completely okay with it, and I think I think he's poised for a good career. I think he's going to be good.
Yeah. Number 11. Where are you going?
Brock Purdy.
Okay.
Uh, so yeah, I don't think they're that far off, but I do think Love's a little bit better. But Purdy, you know, it goes back and forth all the time, right? Like you're probably going to have him a little bit lower, and that's okay. And there's probably a huge argument for him being lower based on the offenses and all that kind of stuff. But like as I even said the thing that of like, does Jordan Love win the Super Bowl with San Francisco last year? Like Purdy was good in that Super Bowl. Like he did a lot of what he could to win. And I actually think he's good at extending plays. I think that's part of the thing that makes him unlocked a little bit more in San Francisco is because the previous guys they had couldn't extend plays. I do think he has some of that game in him. And yeah, I just think he's a pretty good quarterback. And I think he's proven that he's worthy to be in this discussion with these guys.
I would say that when you compare him to the other game manager types, he might be the best when a play breaks down, when the play
Hmm.
isn't working. I think that's why he works so well in the Shanahan scheme. He's considered a game manager, and he's good enough at that to make it, to manage that scheme. But like, he's also really good when play breaks down. I think he's actually even better at that aspect of things, which is what makes him such a good fit. The
Yeah.
reason why I can't quite I had him at 15 on my list, and the reason why I can't put him too much higher is we can't forget that basically 2 times every game he throws directly to the other team.
Yeah. Yeah. So the way I put it is like, so this group is expanding, by the way. This group is actually quite large now of,
Yeah.
you put it as game managers, but it's like, I put them as like good quarterbacks, but you always kind of want a little bit more. This
Mhm.
group used to be like 11 to 15. And to me, I had this group 11 to 19 now. Like, I think it's
Mhm.
that much
Yeah.
bigger. Like, I think there's a lot more like pretty good quarterbacks, but not like great quarterbacks, right? Like, and I agree with what you said. So he is probably better off script than all of those guys, but he might be the worst on script of those guys. Like,
Mhm.
and I think that's the
Yeah.
biggest difference. But I do think that off script thing is what's kind of unlocked San Francisco a little bit more. Not that this team had made a Super Bowl before Brock Purdy was there. They've proven obviously that they can win with almost any quarterback, but it is just a little bit better because I think he is able to, make some things happen because yes, he is in a beneficial situation. Kyle Shanahan is going to script things easy for him, even if he does make a few mistakes. But the 1%, 2% of times Kyle Shanahan doesn't have the answer, Brock Purdy is able to make something happen. And I think that's what lifted this team.
Yeah. It's interesting. He's number 7 on the consensus on the composite quarterback rankings. So, those people are higher than I am. I will say this, I had 4 quarterbacks ahead of Purdy on my list that are still available. I don't think if I'm the 49ers, I would trade Purdy for any of those quarterbacks even if the contracts were equal.
Yeah. Uh, I will say I did see some of those lists, and I saw a couple of them had him like second or something.
Yeah. Mhm.
And that's just an insane take.
Yeah,
If
it's
you're
crazy.
putting Brock Purdy as your second quarterback, that's insane.
But Kyle, he almost won MVP last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that was
Uh,
the thing that happened. That was, I mean, if he didn't if there wasn't that Ravens game, if he played well and they beat the Ravens, I think he wins MVP.
yeah. What would have been really funny is if there was a trade, like if the Bills offered Josh Allen for Brock Purdy midseason in Brock Purdy's MVP year.
Yeah, that would have been something. Let's move on. Number 12 on the list. I'm going Kirk Cousins, who again, we talk about game manager. He's kind of consistently been the guy who gets considered a game manager, really good at being able to process plays, run an offense very well, isn't going to give you a lot when a play breaks down, doesn't turn the ball over too much. We've been a pro Kirk Cousins podcast for a while. I think the only reason that hurts his stock is A, there's just better quarterbacks now, and B, he's, coming off an Achilles injury and getting up there in age. That's the concern. But Cousins is a good quarterback. He was number 11 on my list, 12 on our list.
Yeah, I have him 15, so we clearly have some disagreements
Huh.
here, slightly. But
Hmm.
I did dock him because of the injury, because
Hmm.
he's not young, and that's a big
Yeah.
injury to come back from. I could still see him coming back and being just fine, but it is an injury that you have to account for, I think, and knocked him a little bit. Um, and I also just think that there are good quarterbacks, like you said, and I could see him having. I have 3 guys in front of him that haven't been taken. And I could see all 3 of these guys. I could see him being better than all 3 of these guys, and I could also see him being worse than all 3 of these guys next season. So I do think there is a little bit of he's finally out. Like I think he's going to a really good situation in Atlanta. That being said, it's not the same as having Stephon Diggs and Justin Jefferson.
Hmm.
um,
Sure.
and like I'm curious to see how that goes. And I think
Well, he never
you
had
know,
both Stephon Diggs and Justin Jefferson, but
well,
Stephon
right, but
Diggs then Justin Jefferson. Yeah.
he's had that kind of security blanket no matter what. And as much as I
Mhm.
like Drake London, and I think he's fantastic, he ain't those guys, especially at the time that Kirk Cousins had them. So
Mhm.
I just I think that's going to be an interesting thing to see how that works out. And like I said, he's a little bit older and is coming off a major injury, so I think it could play a part.
Yeah, that being said, I feel like Cousins has played like a fringe top 5 quarterback at times in his career. Like I feel like
Hmm.
he's Kirk Cousins. You just can't take him seriously. Like no one can take like I feel like
Yeah,
if he was just if he was a different player, people would get a different personality. I feel like he would get put on higher put higher on certain rankings.
that's probably true. And he's honestly a pretty nice fantasy guy because of that. Because it's just a consistent like, oh, I'm getting 20 points today. I got Kirk Cousins. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, he's had incredible highs. He's had some great games. He's had some great seasons. Um, but I think it's still one of those things where I don't know what your ceiling is with Kirk Cousins.
Right. Yeah. It's hard to win a Super Bowl paying him 40 million a year. We know that part. Let's move on. Number 13, where are you going?
It's fitting that these two are right next to each other because I feel like they're kind of similar. Dak Prescott.
Okay.
Speaking of playing like top five quarterbacks at times throughout your career, um, Dak Prescott has played like a top five quarterback last season. He was an MVP candidate. I think he was third on most MVP candidates that
I think
didn't
he was
include
second.
Brock Purdy.
I think he
Yeah,
was
I
second
mean,
in voting.
yeah. So he was close. He was in the conversation. He had a fantastic year. Disappointing playoff game again, though, and that's something that's not going to be overlooked. And not only it was just a disastrous playoff game, and the questions are out there, and it's the same thing with Lamar Jackson, but even louder because it's kind of an anomaly season and the Cowboys haven't won in a while. Like it's going to be a narrative until Dak Prescott proves it's not a narrative, and he didn't prove it last season, and he's got to fix it.
Uh, Maybe this was too harsh. I put him at 17 on my
Hmm.
board. I did have him below a few guys. I mean, it's just I don't know. I've always been kind of lower on Prescott. He was great last year. Last year was his best season, but it's like again, I feel like he's these guys, but also he struggles in the playoffs. So it's like to me, that's I'm gonna dock like it's a real thing at this point that he has had bad you know bad moments in big spots. So I don't know. There's things he does very well. But again, you could talk me into bumping him up a few spots, but I'm not. I wouldn't be talking to that much more.
Yeah, I don't know how much higher you could realistically talk me into. I did have him 12th on my list, but um, because I had Cousins a little bit lower. But I would listen to a conversation for three or four of these guys still on the board too. I would listen to it, and it's because, like you said, he's got to perform at the biggest moments. I guess the one thing that he does have is he's at least making the playoffs, which doesn't isn't always the case for some of these guys that we're about to name.
He's not a bad quarterback. He's just
Yeah,
not a great one.
yeah, I would agree.
Kyle, guess where he ranked on the composite quarterback rankings?
Um, 18th.
Fifth. He ranked Dak Prescott ranked fifth. Yes, that is again. This is what drives me crazy about the Cowboys every year.
Yeah. There's a lot of fandom there, I guess. That's crazy. Fifth.
Yeah, I don't know.
What are these people watching?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just they'll say, "Hey, he was second in MVP voting last year." I guess that's the argument.
So if Purdy was second and Dak was fifth,
Well,
and I'm
Purdy
assuming
wasn't.
Mahomes is
Purdy was seventh.
seventh. Okay.
Hmm.
That's okay. Whatever.
Yeah,
All right. Who do you got next?
yeah. I don't know. I don't know about that one. Next, I am going with another kind of the game manager type. I'm going Tua. Tua makes my list at 14. Again, the cold weather thing is a real thing. But like I don't know, he's like really good at like these reading the plays, processing stuff quickly. No one gets the ball out of his hands quicker. I don't believe than Tua. It's just he struggles in cold weather. Like that's a real thing and can get hurt because he's a smaller guy. So, but I don't know. There's a lot to like about Tua.
There's a lot to like about Tua. I feel like I docked him for the same exact reasons you just docked Dak Prescott because I had him 16th.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I think he's good but not great. The stats are impressive. The numbers are impressive. I think he does a lot of good things right, but I just don't know if he's ever going to win if there's ever any adversity, right? Like that's just the one thing I think is an issue, and I just don't know if I'm ever going to trust him in January. I think there's just too many reasons not to. Um, and there's probably the same reasons for Dak, but at least I don't know. I don't know why there's a stigma there for me, but I just feel like I don't trust Tua in those moments.
Yeah, the Lions fans are not thrilled about going with Tua over Goff. Yeah, fair enough. I think that the postseason argument is a reasonable one, even if he does have the higher. To me, I think that Tua, when it comes to someone like a Goff or a Brock Purdy, who I had ahead, is in a dome a better quarterback. But you could talk me into like, yeah, in a big spot he has struggled, so maybe I need to rethink that one.
Well, so let's debate this then, because I have Goff next, and I feel like
Uh-huh.
these two are also debated a lot. Because I think similarly, both guys are good when the situation's clean. Um, but I think that their biggest struggle is, when that pocket collapses, when there's a little bit of a pass rush, when somebody isn't getting separation. I think both of these guys can struggle. I think there's a very similar thing. Similarly, they were 1 and 2 in passing yards last year. They're pretty similar in a lot of statistics. If you go by QB rating, it was 101.1 for Tua, 97.9 for Jared Goff. 60.8 QBR for Tua, 60.3 QBR for Jared Goff. Um, Air yards, all that's pretty close, honestly. I think that these two could be debated. So what is the thing? I guess I don't know. It's so tough because I do think they're in similar situations. But I do think that Jared Goff has proven himself in some bigger spots in multiple situations. Like, yes, he didn't win the Super Bowl with the Rams, but he still got them there. And I still think that's
And
more
then
than
and then
Tua's
what
ever.
then what happened in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, he ran into Bill Belichick. I mean, I don't know. Like, yeah, it's a bad game. It's a really bad performance,
Mhm.
but I feel like still winning a couple of those playoff games that he did should matter a little bit, right?
It does, sure. Again, the playoff argument. I'm totally acknowledging. I think Goff is better. I just think that I don't think that he's. It's not like he's been. Okay, sure. You can say Bill Belichick. Mahomes lit up that same defense 2 weeks prior. I get it's Mahomes, but still, I mean, that happened. You know, uh, for Tua, I do think Tua doesn't give you the random Chicago Bears game where Goff throws 3 interceptions. He doesn't typically give you those. And I also think Tua is better when a play breaks down. That's why I decided to put him ahead. If you want to say, well, he's not as good in the playoffs, so I put him lower, I think that's totally reasonable. But that was my argument.
Uh, I can understand that. I think Goff's arm talent is a little bit better,
Hmm.
and I think he's risen to bigger moments at least. And I just think that stuff matters a little bit to me. But I do think it's really close. Like, I don't think it's that controversial. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, as we're going through this, like, I do think 11 through 16 is probably really, really close. I think you could debate all these guys. So I
Hmm.
think it's completely fair.
Yeah, and that's why sometimes I like to do tier rankings on the channel instead of like rankings like this, because like really they're in the same tier. That's how we should view them. Like you shouldn't view
Yeah.
like Tua as like way better than Goff or Goff way better than Tua. But when you're kind of I do think you're splitting hairs a little bit. We can talk about Goff. We just talked about him. Yeah, I mean, listen. I don't want to make it seem like I'm a Goff like hater or anything. He goes here at 15. He was
You're a
14 on
little bit.
my. Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. I don't know.
Detroit fans are insane. Like,
Yes. Hmm.
you had success. We get it. You can calm down a little bit. Like, that contract is a lot.
Hmm.
It's okay to say Jared Goff is good but not great. Um, you know,
I
I
don't think
think
it
all
is.
of
I don't
that.
think it is okay to say that.
Yeah, I just think it's okay to say all that's true. And also, Jared Goff had a good season last season, so I think all that's fair.
Everyone in the chat is saying I am a Goff hater. Okay, maybe so. I'm not. I Here's the thing though. When I watch Jared Goff on Sundays, I'm not like angry when he scores. I'm like, I think he's a fun quarterback to watch. I am lower on him than most people are. And I gotta say, Kyle, I'm sorry. All the people tweeting out, oh, we can discuss if it's a good contract later. I'm just happy for Jared Goff. What are you talking about? You talk about football for a living. Why are you not willing to say, hey, this was a bit of an overpay?
Yeah, it's okay to say that it was. I don't know
But
why it's
because
so.
you know that if you say overpay, Lions fans are going to tweet at you, "Oh, you were an idiot. Jared Goff is the best." Jared Goff's a good quarterback. I had him at 14 on my list. Well, you okay? If you think he's better than Tua, fine. But like, how much better do you think he is? Like, he's not. He's not better than I don't know. He shouldn't go at number 3.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I do. But I don't know. What's his consensus? Fifth? It's fourth?
His consensus is 15th. I'm higher on him than the consensus.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
See, that's just the thing. Like, yeah, again, I've yet to see a non-Lions fan say I'm too too harsh on Jared Goff. I think we mostly all agree, and I'll say this too while we're doing this. Lions fans wanted Jared Goff out of town. Back when he just got there, they were like, we need a new quarterback, and I was saying that they were being too hard on Jared Goff. So I kept my receipts. I remember that.
Yeah. Um, sound off, man. Sound off on the Detroit fans. Are Detroit fans getting too big for themselves? No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know. I think that they're if no, they're doing what they should be doing. They had so many years of struggle. They should be being arrogant about it.
Yeah. I guess they got Michigan football too, so Michigan's on a high. At least they
Yeah,
got the Pistons to humble them. That's fine.
yeah. If I said yes, the chat would have just gone crazy.
I know, right? Um, Jared Goff's going to make the Super Bowl this year and shut you up.
They can win the Super Bowl. But that wouldn't shut me up at all. If Jared Goff won MVP, that would shut me up. Except he could lead the league in passer rating. That could happen too. But I mean, we're all saying this, but like we all also totally agree that when he's in a bad situation, it tends to not go well, right?
Yeah. I mean, he is he the biggest drop off from the level he is when things are normal to when shit when shit hits the fan. Like that's probably that's probably his biggest thing as a quarterback, right? Like this guy is really good. Like you could honestly debate this guy is a borderline top 10 quarterback. This guy is a borderline top 25 quarterback,
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest difference. That's why there's so much Goff discourse. And I
Yeah.
mean, I hate to say it this way, but he's got an amazing offensive coordinator and amazing offensive line. And that's why we say more of this guy than this guy.
Yeah, which is again, I don't think the Lions want to get rid of him. They just paid him $50 million. I'm not an anti-Jared Goff guy, but let's move on before we spend the entire podcast discussing that. Number 16 on my list, someone who I had above Jared Goff, who this is too low. I have to say, this guy should not be this low. Trevor Lawrence at 16. Trevor Lawrence was playing at a really high level early on last year. The play did, there was all those drop touchdowns. The box score again, it's the box score stats argument, right? Lawrence's box score stats weren't what Jared Goff's were, so he is gonna get docked for that. And he got banged up towards the end of the year. The guy was playing with like 8 different injuries those last several games.
Yeah.
I'm really not holding that against him. I hold against him a little because I have him still at 13 on my list. But I don't know. I think Lawrence did a lot of really good stuff and has that really good game manager stuff, but also has shown a real ability to make things happen after a play breaks down too. So yeah, he's at 16.
Yeah, the next 2 guys that we have on this list could definitely play at a top 10 level, and it wouldn't be surprising. The question is just can we get there consistently? And I think that's definitely been the question for Lawrence for some time. I think the criticism got too loud last season. Like you said, he was dealing with a lot of adversity. I still don't love what they've done to this receiver room for him, basically. But I do think I do think there was a step in the right direction when it came to the decision-making things that drive you crazy about Lawrence last year. He just didn't have the incredible highs last year because he was injured. So it's really hard to judge that because some of the wow factor with Trevor Lawrence was kind of toned down last year. But I think some of the right calls that we wanted to see the development from was there last year. So I had Trevor Lawrence 14. I had him above Cousins and Tua. And I do think the ceiling of him is higher than guys like Brock Purdy, guys like Dak Prescott, guys like Jared Goff. I mean, you can even argue that the ceiling of him is higher than Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers. So I do think he could be at that conversation next year if he gets better, continues to get better.
Yeah, I think some people feel a little burned by him because they were like, "Oh, he's going to win MVP," and then when he didn't do that, it was kind of like almost
Hmm.
like too low on. You kind of sometimes pendulum swings the other way. But yeah, we can move on. We're 50 minutes into the show, and we're only halfway through, so we might have to power through with some of these, Kyle. But yeah, and also just letting the chat know, hey, feel free to keep arguing. Arguing is fun. I don't want you
Yeah.
to think that just because I argue back, I don't want you to think I want you to stop. So that's we know what we're doing, creating a list. We know we're going to get some discussion. But yeah, Kyle, go ahead with number 17.
Jackson just said this is all clickbait.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah. So three more quarterbacks in my good but not great guys. Pretty good quarterbacks, I think, for sure, and starting level players. My next guy is Kyler Murray. Like, this is
Hmm.
another guy who I think the ceiling of him could be a top 10 guy. I absolutely think he can. Obviously, coming off the injury, he was a little rusty last year. There was some inconsistency, but there was still plenty of those wow moments that get you really excited about Kyler Murray, man. And I still think of that like Las Vegas Raiders game a couple years ago where he's just running around for his life for 20 seconds and then scores. Things like that. Those things are awesome. It's amazing. There's not many guys in the league. Probably only one other guy in the league can do stuff like that. And that's the kind of ceiling that we have. But we got to, sooner or later, we got to ask the question of can he be that guy consistently from a health standpoint, which is a big question given his size, from a consistency of play standpoint. And, if we see all that kind of coalesce, he's going to have a great season. They've given him a great receiver weapon too to work with. I just want to see it a little bit more to move him up into that tier, but I do think he has that talent.
Yeah, it's just listen. The guy's been an MVP candidate, in the past, an MVP favorite. He was favored to win MVP about week 10, but what happened since then? He's gotten injured, struggled to stay healthy, been inconsistent when he has been out there. The ceiling is so good, you have to put him high. I had him at 16 on my list. He was also next on my list, but yeah, you can't. There have been the lows. Also, Donovan's disappointed that we haven't gone with Will Levis yet at 17. Donovan, you got a tough thing coming, I think.
Yeah, you got to keep waiting for me, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that might be a little disappointing. Yeah, but yeah, Kyler's definitely someone who has the potential to get a lot higher on the list, but just for now, kind of have to put him here. Want to move on to number 18?
Yeah, we could breeze through some of these, I think.
Yeah, well, I'm going with my guy Baker Mayfield here at
Uh-huh.
18. Again, it's the 1 year sample size. I think there's potential to get better. He was 18th on the the consensus quarterback rankings as well. The turnovers have to stop. And last year, I don't think the turnovers were as bad, but he still put the ball in harm's way a good amount. He still has the inconsistent moments that he just has to work out. He's a bit of a gunslinger. It's part of what he is, and I don't know if you can win a Super Bowl. But I guess the one thing you would say that is maybe a little bit more optimistic is could he be the kind of guy who can go on a run? We've seen him get hot at times, so that's kind of what's nice. And again, maybe just finally getting some consistency could be a good thing for him. But for now, I think 18 feels fair.
Yeah. What do you think of Kyler greater than Mahomes here in the chat?
Kyler greater than Mahomes. That's it's an opinion.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I'll leave it at that. I
Yeah.
did have Baker Mayfield 19th, but I do think he was better than the guy I had at 18th last season. And, we just said it with Jared Goff. If Jared Goff's number one and the difference between this guy and this guy, Baker Mayfield's probably number two, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Uh, you know, the best version of Baker Mayfield's really fun to watch, and it's exciting. He gets the crowd excited. He gets his teammates excited. And then the bad version of Baker Mayfield's kind of miserable, right? Like
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
think that's kind of the difference. And there is some, I think like riding on that high those first couple weeks, and then there was that Philly game early in the season. And I just kind of go back to those moments, and it's like those are the moments where it's like, yeah, I kind of wish I had a different quarterback than Baker Mayfield at this spot. But
Yeah.
he did manage to bounce back and put together a really nice season. I thought he was really productive. And I mean, whether it's 18, 19 in your rankings, the fact that Baker Mayfield's here compared to where he was looking to be out of the league last year, I mean, it just tells you what he was last season and how good he was. And, it's a huge jump forward for him and what we were expecting last season.
And he's not getting paid like a top quarterback, which helps.
Yeah. That definitely helps. Yeah,
Mhm.
it opens up the cap space for sure.
All right. 19. Where are you going?
Geno Smith, I think he's the
Mhm.
last guy in this tier. After this, I think it opens up to, you know, Do you take a chance on some younger guys, or do you go with the kind of the fringe starters or the replaceable starters? I think he's the last guy that's in the good but not great. He does his job. I think it was a little bit of a regression year last year, but I don't think it was also all his fault. I think there were some other factors in that Seattle offense that played into it, and I still think he's going to be pretty good this next season. And I still like Geno Smith.
Yeah, another guy who can do stuff when plays break down too. Kind of
Yeah,
underrated his playmaking stuff. Yeah, I'm with you. I had him 19 on my list. He was next on my list as well. Hopefully things can go better for the Seahawks and maybe if a new coaching staff dig in.
yeah. Would love to see them open up that offense. We'll see. Defensive
Yeah.
coordinator hiring, I'm not exactly sure it's going to happen, but
Mhm.
wouldn't mind seeing it happen.
Yeah, all right. Well, I don't know if we have forever to go with Geno Smith, but we can move on to. I have one guy also in this tier. I think there is one more in this tier. Derek Carr. I decided to put here as
Yes.
well. You're excited about this. Maybe I just can't quit Derek Carr. I don't know, but I did think he was legitimately like really good towards the end of last year. I thought that he had some
hmm
really put some. And again, it's the that he just happened to put a couple of good games together against teams that had given up, or did he actually get better? I think he got better. I think that you can't pretend the first 2/3 of the season didn't happen, but I'm willing to still put him in this tier because of that ending.
Yeah, I can get it. I did have him. I had him 22, so it's not like drastically lower. I do think he would be he's pretty close to the top of my next tier, um, which is kind of like that, replaceable starters. There was a lot of bad though to begin that year, and honestly, like some of it was just confounding to me because like I just I watched that Saints team all season thinking those receivers are better than the way they're performing. And everybody in New Orleans is ready to drive them out of town. And I just didn't know what happened. And I I do think a lot of that was on him to start that last season. Like you said, he did get better. It was a whole new situation for him for basically the first time in his career. So maybe that played a big part. And I could see him bouncing back. But I did knock him a little bit of that because I just didn't think it was that. I thought it was that bad for a huge stretch of the year.
Yeah, I like the comment. No Spencer Rattler. Yeah, decided to go Goff instead of Rattler. I mean, no, he wasn't great last year. I'm not going to argue that at all. I just think like I'm willing to believe. It sounds weird to say, but I'm willing to believe that the past 2 years were an anomaly, which is a dumb thing to do for a quarterback in
Right.
their mid 30s. But I do actually think in this case that is the situation.
Yeah, I did my fist pump because you can't quit him. He's your guy for life.
Yeah, all every year I'll be 10 years from now I'll be picking him at 31 when he's a third string for the Ravens or whatever.
Yeah. Is that 2-hour video still on your YouTube?
Oh yeah, it's there.
That's an all-timer. That's a
Yeah,
that's a classic.
that one was good. I can't imagine that, and people watched it too. Like it was like I remember I made a mistake on a player name, and people were like an hour and 40 minutes in, this player was actually this player. I'm like, wow, like, I did not think anyone was going to make it this far.
Didn't think they needed to edit that one.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I thought it'd be okay there. 21. This is where things get interesting. I think Kyle. We have a dozen players left. Is there going to be a rookie quarterback going here?
There is. This may be insane, but I've been insane about it for a while now. Caleb Williams. I had him 20. I do think the ceiling of this guy is even higher than 20 for next
Hmm.
season. And I'm not joking. Like next season, he could be a top 10 guy. But I do have to be a little bit more objective about this, even though I've talked him up all off season, because I'm no longer talking about him as a draft prospect. I'm talking about him as a quarterback in next year. He's got to clean up some of the mistakes. He's got to clean up some of the dumb stuff that he does, which there is dumb stuff. Like as much as I think a lot of it was him kind of messing around or him saying, I got to do everything because my team's not very good. He can't run backwards 20 yards all the time in
Hmm.
the NFL and say, I'm going to make this play just because I can. He can't drop the snap and then pick it up and say, well, the guy's open.
Yeah.
That's not going to work as often in the NFL. But I do think there's so much good here that it's just too hard to pass up. I think he's in a really good situation with how they built this offense. And I could see the Bears being really good next year because I do think he has that talent. And I do think he could be this level of guy. And so that's why I have him at 20. And
No,
I
this
think, what is it, 21 here?
Yeah, 21. Yeah, no, this show's basically been you saying I have an insane take that everyone's going to criticize, and then it's also my opinion. Yeah, I had Caleb Williams 21 on my list. He was next as well. I'm with you. There will be a bit of a learning curve, but the upside is there. I think putting him here totally feels fair.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about Caleb. We don't have to go on about it, but yeah, there's a ton of talent there, obviously.
Well, next up, I'm kind of same thing. Again, we don't spend forever, but I'm with your guy, Drake May, at 22. It's kind of same thing of like, listen, if what's the most likely outcome? The most likely outcome is not that he is the 22nd best quarterback in football, but there's the potential he's like a top 10 quarterback in football if things go right. So because of that, I'm still going to take him here at 22.
Yeah. So I had, like I said, I had Carr 22. I had a Patriots quarterback 23.
Oh.
I,
Mm-hmm.
I am I am of the belief that this will be a succession plan. I do
Mm-hmm.
think it's going to happen. So I have Jacoby Brissett here. Um, I wouldn't be surprised if Drake May plays more next year, and especially towards the end of the season, because I don't think this team's going to be very good. But I do think that they're going to start with Jacoby Brissett because I don't think they want to throw him into the fire because I think they recognize that this team isn't good enough, especially on offense, and I don't think they want to throw him in there without a left tackle. We don't have a starting caliber left tackle. We have 4 left tackles. They're all backup caliber left tackles. We don't really have the receiver options that we love. We have a rookie receiver that we like, but I don't think they're going to throw him into that fire. I'm okay with putting Drake May here. I think he's in the conversation, and he honestly, if I did have him on the rankings, he'd still probably be 23 or 24 for me. So I'm okay with it. I just think it's going to be Jacoby Brissett to start the year because I think that they're not going to throw him into that spot.
Yeah, could be interesting. Let's move on. 23. Where are you going?
Um, Item 21 because I just put him here and said I guess. Deshaun Watson, like I guess. Um, I'm no longer making the excuses for the rust. Obviously there has been some injuries. Could he bounce back? I guess maybe. Could we ever see that Deshaun Watson that we once saw? Maybe, but I'm not betting on it. I'm not betting on it anymore. So I have him 21. He's going what 23 on our list. 22
Was
on
it
our list.
I'm trying to remember now.
Um,
I screwed up. Was it 23?
Yeah, because I would have an
Oh
odd
yeah,
number
that's right.
because I
You
picked one.
odds.
So
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, he would be 23 on my list. 21 on my list, 23 on our rankings. I'm just not expecting it. So I'm okay with putting him here. He's probably the start of the bad quarterback tier.
Yeah, he was 19th on the consensus quarterback rankings, which I thought was high for me. He did not make my list. I went with Jameis Winston. I mean, like I just he hasn't played well since he's barely played these past couple of years, and when he has played, he's played poorly. I mean, I don't like. I get he was great in Houston, but like when it's been 3 seasons since you've been good, you have to go back to your 4 seasons ago. I need to see it again, like that before I'm going to say that I'm not saying he can't. He can be a top 5 quarterback next year. That's in the cards, but I can't project that.
Yeah, I mean I can agree with it for sure. I still think he's better than Jameis Winston, but I do think that there now looks to be a ceiling on him as a player. And it'll be fascinating to see because that Browns team is good, and you know with all their quarterback issues last year, they managed to put together a great season. And like it's not inconceivable to say if Deshaun Watson plays at a top 15 quarterback level, this Browns team could compete for a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But he's not in that conversation right now. He's just not close.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the thing is everyone kept saying, "Oh, well, with all the injuries the Browns had, they were on their 4th string quarterback. Next year it'll be better." It's like, well, the 4th string quarterback outplayed their 1st string quarterback last year. Like Joe Flacco was better.
Yeah, he was. So I don't know how you can make that excuse. It's just it's what it is at this point. Until he proves it, he's not at the point because we made the excuses from the last 2 seasons. We did. Not as a person, as a player. As a
Hmm.
player on the football field, we made the excuses for him. Said we'll give it a shot. I still believe in the talent of what he showed. Now he has to prove us, and that's
Yeah.
what this ranking replicates.
Yeah, I agree. Let's go to 24, a guy who hasn't proven anything, but I'm still interested in. Anthony Richardson goes at 24, which again, there's kind of a run on projection guys, is kind of what I put them at, like starting with Caleb Williams, and there's still one more of just like, I don't know. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly in the conversation. I did have him 27. I like it's another one where I could see him take a huge leap next season. But he's got to play. That's the first
Yeah.
thing.
Hmm.
He's got to show that he's not making those bad throws because he's going to make a lot of bad throws. But he is really exciting. Like
Hmm.
that can't be understated enough. Like he probably gets a bump in a lot of rankings just because he is fun to watch.
Oh,
And
yeah. Hmm.
like I think that I do think that matters to a lot of people.
Yeah. Great highlights.
Yeah, for
Short,
sure.
but great.
Not a lot of them, but they are awesome. I agree.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's very good. 25. Where are you going?
I had him 24th on my list, Daniel Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Like, look, I don't think he's a bad quarterback. I
Uh-huh.
don't think he's bad. He's just, you know, he's replaceable. He's in the same boat for me as Deshaun Watson. I mean, I have Jacoby Brissett over him too. So,
Yeah.
and Jacoby Brissett has been replaced multiple times. So, yeah, I think all three of those guys are replaceable, but they're good enough to, it's not a dire situation. I think with those guys, I don't think it's a dire. The problem is Daniel Jones's contract situation is dire, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the biggest difference to me.
Yeah, and I'm with you now. I don't think he's terrible. I think that he's a solid player. It's just that I also think I put some of the projection guys ahead of him just because, like, I don't know, Drake May. There's a much better chance Drake May does something great next year than Daniel Jones, in my opinion. We know who Daniel Jones is. That's kind of what hurts him as well. I'm at 26. I'm with you. Again, a fine player. He should be in the league for another 10 years. Just he shouldn't be. Well done getting that. But should he just retire after after he gets cut by the Giants? He's made his money. Like this is as high
Yeah.
as it's going to get for him winning that playoff game. Like just tap out.
Well, it was a pretty nasty neck injury last year, wasn't it? Wasn't that what it was?
I don't remember.
I thought it was a neck injury. I could be wrong, but uh, I guess here's my spin for Daniel Jones. If you're going to argue Daniel Jones, which I wouldn't advocate for,
Uh-huh.
I'll start with, but I'll make the argument. He's going to have his best receiver of his entire career
Oh yeah.
next season, and he's had good years without that.
Hmm.
And there could be an opportunity here for him to build some chemistry with the guy, and it could be interesting to see that. And I do think he looks like such a dork that I think his athleticism is vastly underrated. Like,
Yeah.
I do think he's pretty good running off script and making plays with his legs. And, I think he's better than a lot of the guys in front of him, maybe besides Kyler Murray, at making plays with his legs and with a really good receiver now in tow. I do think that could play a part in him having a bounce back season. I'm not betting on it. I'm not advocating for it, but it could be a thing.
Yeah, and I'll say this too, like, the gap between 25 and, like, 20 isn't that large.
No, no, it's really not. It's not. It's very minimal, I think. Like I said, he's in the replaceable tier.
Mhm, yeah. Well, let's move on to another rookie quarterback going here. I'm going Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels, who I think should be pretty good right away. I think that, like, again, I have real concerns about could he get hurt and stuff like that, but I don't know. I could see him having an RG3 caliber first year. Like, that's kind of what he's gotten positive and negative comparisons with. His mobility should help him out, and I do think he's gonna have a real learning curve with it's the dealing with the NFL game as opposed to the LSU, like guys getting open that constantly. I think his running ability will still be good enough, and he is pretty good as a pocket passer, I think. So even though I'm not a huge fan of him, I still put him at 24 on my list. He goes here at 26.
Yeah. My dogs are barking. Hopefully they don't bark while I'm in mid conversation here. But yeah, I think, as much as I like Terry McLaurin, I think he could still have a better receiving core last year than he does this year. I do like that
Hmm.
Washington receiving core though. It's just better compared to the talent gap that you're playing against. And I think the offensive line is better last year that he had talent gap wise than it is this year. So that does play a part, I think, in it to me. I am seriously concerned with the injuries, but we'll see. But yeah, I mean, there, you could argue he was probably one of the more polished guys. We didn't rank May and Williams ahead of him, but you could argue he was more polished and more ready to go than those guys are just from a, performance last season. So it could be interesting to see how he performs next year. And I do think it could be in the conversation. But I do think there are some things that it could be an interesting awakening, I think, too, for him. So we'll see how it goes. I had him 28 just because I docked the younger guys a little bit more.
Sure,
Besides
understandable.
Caleb.
Yeah. 27. Where are you going?
Um, I had him 25, I guess. Another one, Russell Wilson.
Hmm.
I think you put the projection guys over the replaceable starters for me, and I had the replaceable starters over the projection guys. That's really the difference in our rankings at this point. Russell Wilson, I'm not expecting a whole lot from this change from Kenny Pickett to Russell Wilson. I think it's going to be about the same. So I got him here.
I don't know. I feel like I also am at 25th in my rankings. I think going from Kenny Pickett to 25th might be a pretty nice upgrade.
You think it's substantial?
I don't know. I think that like again, I think Russell Wilson was probably better than the 25th best quarterback last year. I just think that there's a lot of good rookies that I put ahead of Wilson this year. But like, yeah, I don't know. Substantial. I don't know, almost significant, not quite significant, but a slight. What's a near? I'm trying to think of what's a word to phrase. I don't know. This is tough. Podcasting is hard.
Yeah. Um, it's a bit of a gap, I'd say, but not
Yeah,
much. I don't know. I'm not expecting more from
a
the Steelers
decent
because they have
upgrade.
Russ.
I'll say a
Yeah,
decent. That's the word. Decent
yeah.
upgrade.
I'm not expecting more from the Steelers because of this. I guess is what I should say. I think I'm expecting about the same, even if it looks a little bit better.
Yeah, but Kyle, didn't you see his box score numbers last year?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean that is again. If last year hopefully did anything to people, it shows that passer rating isn't a. It's an okay stat to use, but it's not an end all be all.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
hmm Yeah, but I don't know. It should be better than what they had last year at the very least. 28. This is my pick. Another should be better than it was last year. I don't know if this guy's going to start, but he was who I had highest on my board. Gardner Minshew for the Raiders.
Hmm.
Again, kind of similar to Russell Wilson. Should give you like solid quarterback play. They're paying more, the Raiders are, but still, like should give you at least not atrocious quarterback play next year. Maybe Aiden O'Connell gets to start and improves in year two, but he's fine.
Yeah. It's another one where it's a decent upgrade to what they had last season. I would say that, but I don't
hmm
know how much more I'm expecting. Plus, you're going to get 3 wins because this guy seems like the luckiest quarterback I've ever seen at times.
Uh
It
huh.
just I don't understand how it works, but this guy has some voodoo magic that doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I think it's a decent upgrade. I don't think it's a substantial one, and I'm expecting more from the Raiders, but I do think he was the next guy on my list, and I think it makes sense.
Yeah. All right. 4 players left here. Number 29 on the list. Where are you going?
Will Levis,
hmm
I think it was better than what I was expecting last season, better than what I viewed him as a quarterback prospect. I don't think it was as amazing as people were making it out to be. Maybe he continues to get better. The arm talent is there. We did see that. But I want to see a little more than, you know what, let me just chuck this and see what happens out of the offense. Now, he has some decent receivers, so maybe that helps. But I want to see a little bit more than that out of my quarterback. So we'll see how he continues to progress.
Yeah, listen, Will Levis had the flashes for sure last year. It's just that he did not have a ton of it's the kind of thing where sometimes for a young quarterback who plays for a team that doesn't get a ton of attention, people only notice the positives. And he had a great primetime win comeback against the Dolphins, so that certainly helps. But yeah, I'm with you. I mean, the consistency was just not there at all, and I wasn't high on him as a prospect coming out of college either. Maybe he'd be higher in my rankings if I was.
Where'd you have him?
I had him at 30.
Okay. So you have Bryce Young over him.
No, I do not.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
uh, let's get into it. The guy I had over him was a 29, JJ McCarthy. I put over him. Again, young player. I think he'll have a learning curve, but I don't know. There's things to like in McCarthy's game enough for me to put him. Sometimes the unknown is a little better than the known in a couple of cases.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I did put the unknown a little bit lower though. I had him 31. I had the two youngest rookies, 31 and 32. Although I put Daniels a little bit. I put Daniels over him, and then I put Caleb obviously higher. But yeah, I mean, I'm okay with it. I do think that he can be that good. I wouldn't be shocked if he's better than Will Levis next season, and he's got a really nice situation with those receivers. But yeah, it's just a little bit of an unknown to me. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't argue too harshly if you're going to argue JJ McCarthy over Will Levis next season.
Yeah, I think in general, I'm not going to argue too much in any year over my 29th versus 30th ranked
30th, yeah.
quarterbacks. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
think
think that's perfectly fair.
yeah. Well, let's move on then. 2 left. So you get picking one will then, in theory, make it clear who the next player is. Kyle, where are you going?
You definitely know who I'm putting 32. So I'm leaving him for you at 32. Um,
Uh,
Bryce Young's 30th on my list. He's going 31 here. Like, look, I mean, it's got to be better. like, like
hmm
we made a lot of excuses from last year, and I think a lot of them were justified. We've been saying, I know I was saying, especially from the beginning of the season, that I thought what they put around him was pretty piss poor. I made a lot of excuses for before the season even started for Bryce Young, saying that this is not a great situation. I think they kind of did him dirty here, and it went as badly as you could have imagined. His best receiver was Adam Thielen. That's not a situation you want to be in 2024. I don't think it was great. It could get better. I could see it being a lot better next season, but I also want to put it bluntly. Bryce Young was bad last year, and he has to be better for this to change. And I could see him making the leap, but those numbers have to improve.
Yeah, we can say what we want about situation and all that. He was the worst quarterback in football last year, and he was
Mhm.
32 on my list because of that. I get it. I don't think it's impossible for him to be a good quarterback in the NFL. I really don't. But like, it's a light turned on. Kyle had an idea, I
Yeah,
guess.
I
But yeah,
guess.
no. I mean, listen. Could it be better? Sure. And even despite the fact that I put him at 32, said what the Panthers should do is go all out to try and kind of build a situation around Bryce Young to be successful. But like, I mean, it is what it is. He looked like how Zach Wilson looked as a rookie. You can't give up on him after a rookie, but like that's how it looked like.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely looked like that situation, and there's not a lot of excuses from this year because I mean, it's still not awesome, but it's a lot better situation this year for sure.
Yeah. Well, then number 32. You know what? Even though it is technically my time, I'm going to let you have the floor here, Kyle. Bo Nix, who is number 31 on my board. Why did you have him at 32?
I mean, look, I'm just not a
Is it
believer
because
in
the
him as
Broncos don't have another quarterback on their roster that's good at all?
basically, yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, I almost put Jared Stidham on the list, honestly, no joke. So
Yeah.
I almost consider Jared Stidham. I'm not a believer in Bo Nix. This is not breaking news for anybody who's listened to the podcast. I don't know if he's going to be NFL comparable, but we'll see. Sean Payton seems to believe it, and Sean Payton knows more about football than I do. That's not a
Hmm.
hot take, but I just don't know how much quarterback accuracy for throws behind the line of scrimmage does at the NFL level. So I'm not expecting it to translate. I could be proven wrong, but I don't know if this is going to be Bo Nix season. So I have him 32.
If the Denver Broncos make the playoffs with Bo Nix as the starter for the majority of the games, will you buy and wear a Bo Nix jersey?
No, but
No.
I will. I will
What if
say
the
I'm wrong.
what if the chat funds the or what if I buy you a Bo Nix jersey? Would you wear it?
Fine, I'll wear it.
Okay, maybe we'll get the chat to chip in.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
Yeah, if that happens, I'll wear it, but I'm not expecting to have to worry about that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we'll see. I don't think I'm pretty sure you won't have to either. But yeah. Okay. Kyle will wear a Bo Nix jersey if the Broncos make the playoffs. That is, it's on record saying that. Kyle, next week, do you want to do the head coach rankings?
Yeah, let's keep it moving with our rankings, our
Yeah.
debates.
So next week we'll do the same thing with head coaches. Should be interesting. Again, usually there's more wild takes then, but also the chat gets less angry if you're lower under head coach because usually the chat, half people in chat hate their own head coach. So that's an aspect of it. But yeah, that's an interesting one. Kyle, let them know if you can find us on Twitter before we head out.
Yeah, make sure to follow us on Twitter. That is at Jackson Kruger. Make sure to follow me at by Kyle Gronin, and make sure to follow the account page at On the Sideline JK. That is at On the Sideline JK.
Of course, if like audio only podcast, anywhere you get your podcast, search On the Sideline podcast. It should be available. There's a dog in the background, so that is fun. And yeah, people are saying they're going to chip in on the jersey, Kyle. So this is going
Yeah,
to happen. Everyone
yeah.
say hello to
Luna,
the dog.
Luna, say hi. There you go.
Yeah,
She's in.
nice. Well, again, like I stayed at the end of the show to see Luna.
Yeah, she is always around. So she made the drive up to New Hampshire with me. She hated it.
My dog hate. I just got back from Wisconsin and we flew out of Tampa because my parents live there and they were watching Rhino. And when I get home, she doesn't even get excited to see me. She's just nervous because she knows the car ride's coming.
Yeah. She's not that bad. She just kind of sits there. Well, like, when she starts panting, it's like, okay, I think it's time to take a break because she's just like stressed out too much, but she's okay.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, yeah, Kyle. I know we got to get out of here. It's a late show. I wanted to ask you real quick though. How Bruins? How you feeling?
I don't think we're gonna win the series, but it was nice to see them put up a fight in Game 5. I don't know. Like, I still think that this offense isn't good enough. That's the thing that's kind of come to fruition. I said that I was worried about the non-Pasternak goal scorers, and never mind goal scorers, they don't get shots. I
Hmm.
can't remember a team with so many games where single-digit shots halfway through the second period, and they're just not creating enough chances. And I think it's going to come back to bite them. I think that I can say the call was wrong in Game 4. That's
Yeah.
I'll just continue to say that. It was a wrong call. That was 1000% a cross check into a goalie interference, but you know, it's also a loss because we're not shooting the puck and we're not scoring goals. So I can't have it both ways.
Yeah. The Bruins deserve to be down in a series. Also, that was one of the worst calls I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, it's just baffling that they would argue that. So it is what it is. But like I said, I think the bigger problem is that we're not scoring enough goals and not getting enough shots on net. So maybe they were able to galvanize at home, get one more win, and then Game 7, anything's possible. But I'm not expecting them to win this series.
Well, I didn't expect this to end on such a dour note. I guess I should have, but
I'm content with it. I'm not like pissed off or anything. I'm kind of just content that I think Florida's a better team than us, and
yeah.
I don't like them.
Hmm.
Matthew Tkachuk can get dropped off a building, but
Okay, well, let's
uh,
not say I'll drop off the building onto a mat, so he's not seriously injured.
no concrete.
Okay, all right. Well, let's save the death threats here live
I'm
on
not
air.
saying I'm going to do it. I just said like I'm not exactly going to run to
You're saying
save him.
you're saying he can do it. It's something he's allowed to do if he chooses to.
Yes, yes, it's his choice
Okay.
to die.
Okay. All right. Around call out. This is my bad. Apology. Thank you for watching the last on the sideline podcast. Everyone in the chat, we do appreciate it. Yeah. Until next time, have a good one.
Peace.